X-Men 97 Season 2 Episode 8 is officially here, so let's just get right into it because today we're talking X-Men 97 Season 2 Episode 8 breakdown and review. But before we get into anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Alright, so getting right into it, we finally get the official return for Gambit. We get the reunion between Gambit and the X-Men. And I will say, this episode did not disappoint. One thing I have been wanting throughout this entire season is Rogue truly dealing with her trauma. And the episode literally starts out with her having dreams about Gambit, and some of them are actually teasing what happens a little bit later on in the episode, Gambit's eventual return. And I feel like seeing her go through all of this trauma and even remember back to some of the things that she talked to Apocalypse about, I feel like we're all just really good full circle moments for the character. And another thing I really liked was that Nightcrawler very quickly picked up on something being wrong with Rogue, especially after finding out that somehow Gambit had returned. Nightcrawler decided to go and comfort her because he understood that she was just pushing a lot of her emotions to the side. And I feel like they do a really good job showing us that Nightcrawler truly is such an integral part of the X-Men because of his pure heart, because of his genuine care and compassion for others. Last episode showed us what happens when Nightcrawler stops feeling that compassion. However, that was something that was built up over a long period of time, and it ultimately culminated in him becoming more cold-hearted towards one specific person. But even then, he held back a lot more than other characters would in this universe. So I'm just really glad that they decided to show us that Nightcrawler is still incredibly compassionate when it comes to his friends, when it comes to the people that he truly sees as his family. Now, speaking of family, another thing that I really liked about this episode, we got a reunion once again for Cable, Scott, and Jean. And Scott actually asks Cable why Cable never decided to tell them that they had all met before and that they actually met him when he was a child. And I like that Cable's response doesn't contradict anything that we've had from previous seasons, but it also makes sense for his character. There's always something else going on. There's always something crazy going on that stops us from talking about that. It seems we're always in a race against time that just rips us apart. These are all things that are very reasonable explanations for as to why Cable would never tell them about interacting with them when he was just a child. Now, aside from all the positive family dynamics, we obviously get a lot more Gambit in this episode. We see him returning home, and we even see him interacting with a lot of people from his past. And this version of Gambit is so incredibly powerful. He's able to actually take over the minds of other people. He's able to change who they are entirely. And I really liked that his ultimate goal in doing this wasn't to dominate the world or anything like that. No, it was just to create a scenario in which he and Rogue can be together once again. He wanted to get this sacred amulet that once belonged to Apocalypse and then had been given to the external. And this was also he and Rogue can be together forever. And as someone who is really rooting for the two of them in season 1, this actually makes me really happy to see. It feels like there was actually still a part of Gambit truly still in there, because at the end of the day, the only thing he really wanted, at least in that moment, was to be with Rogue forever and to ensure that nothing would ever take away their happiness again. I also thought that the actual reunion between Rogue and Gambit was really nice. It was really heartfelt, and I was actually pretty surprised that her powers at the beginning didn't work on him. He had become that powerful by that point that they did not affect him, and she couldn't truly get through to him. And the X-Men get their asses absolutely handed to them, and Gambit is actually able to get away with not only Rogue, but also with Nightcrawler. And the action sequences where we had the X-Men going up against Gambit's forces, but more specifically, going up against Nightcrawler, seeing all those different POV shots and seeing him just absolutely dominate the X-Men was awesome. Nightcrawler has one of the most unique and fun to watch fighting styles in the entire series. And yes, last episode we got a very good amount of that. I feel like they definitely amped it up in this episode, and we saw just how powerful Nightcrawler truly is. He was taking down different members of the X-Men and making it look relatively easy. I also really like that they changed the color of the smoke after he utilizes his teleportation. I thought that was a really cool detail. Storm probably had the other highlight moment in the fight when she decided to call upon the powers of water, but also mixed it with lightning to create this lightning shockwave. That was absolutely awesome to see. I hope we get a little bit more of Storm in this finale episode, especially because I feel like she has been drastically underutilized this season. And considering the fact that her fight sequences and the animation that you can use thanks to her power set are some of the best in the entire series. So it would be a huge shame if they didn't capitalize on that more to end off the season, especially considering I feel like we were definitely lacking in that area throughout this entire season. So it would just be really cool to see a little bit bit more of Storm and a little bit more of her fight sequences. I also really like the battle sequence in the mindscape between Professor Xavier and Gambit, where Professor Xavier is trying to rescue Gambit, and just when we think that Professor Xavier is actually making progress and actually might bring back Gambit, the Gambit we know and love, Apocalypse makes his presence known. A lot of people were theorizing that Apocalypse could not die. There's no way they could kill him off screen, and that makes a lot of sense. It would have been absolutely absurd if they decided to kill off the big bad main villain who is supposed to be the overarching villain of this entire season off screen. That would have been incredibly out of character for this show as a whole. And while we still don't know exactly what all of this means, we don't know if this means Apocalypse evolved in some way, if he left behind his body and he is just now going to take over Gambit and that is going to become his new vessel, or if there is another Apocalypse that also exists in this time, and maybe he just wiped out the other version of Apocalypse. Those are all things that we are going to have answered in this finale episode. And I also really like that when Apocalypse makes himself known in that mindscape and starts to overpower Charles, he once again mentions something that he said to Charles in their altercation in the past, in the altercation with Magneto. And he once again throws words right in the professor's face. And I feel like all of these things are just leading to the professor becoming darker and darker, because Apocalypse is constantly pushing these buttons that Professor Xavier has that is leading him down this darker path. And I am absolutely here for it. However, before anything truly negative can happen, Rogue luckily swoops in, utilizes her powers, and makes a connection with Gambit. And this connection is actually able to not only bring Gambit back, but also seemingly able to get rid of Apocalypse's grasp on Gambit. Now, does this mean Gambit is going to be totally in the clear? Well, probably. I feel like there will be some type of ramifications from this. I don't think they would just let him come back that easily. However, considering the fact in the past, when they did any type of storyline like this, it was something that felt a little bit rushed. I feel like it would stand to reason that Gambit is just back from this point on, and they could progress the story from there and truly focus on what is going on with Apocalypse versus him having any type of grasp on Gambit any longer. And then at the very end of the episode, we see that Cable and the remaining members of his team are confronted by X-Factor. However, this isn't to bring them in and this isn't to fight them. It's actually to team up with them to take on the X-Men. They see the X-Men as the true threat and the true enemies. And now this is literally setting up in the finale a Civil War type of situation between X-Factor and X-Force going up against the X-Men. Now, in my opinion, would it be more interesting to see something like the Avengers versus the X-Men? Yes, absolutely. However, I feel like that is something that they are definitely slowly building to and will absolutely happen in a later season. And seeing Cable actually go up against his parents will be something that will be incredibly cool to see. However, all that being said, that is essentially all I have as far as positives for the episode. Now, as far as negatives go, I just feel like I wish we got a little bit more of this version of Gambit. I feel like they made us go on a lot of side quests this season, and it would have been a lot cooler to get this version of Gambit fleshed out a little bit more. Focus a little bit more on the storyline with Apocalypse, because now it truly feels like we have so many things to wrap up in episode 9. And even though we're definitely going to get a cliffhanger or two going into season 3, I feel like we might have even more than that. And if we don't, it's going to feel incredibly rushed, because there's no way that they can truly wrap up all the different storylines and all the loose ends that they still have out there. And although having a couple storylines that they still need to wrap up isn't necessarily a bad thing because it makes people excited for season 3, there are also certain things that if we don't get some type of conclusion for, it's going to make us feel like the season was pretty lackluster overall, and it's going to lead to it feeling pretty anticlimactic. It feels like this season overall was building to a couple of things, and so far we realistically haven't gotten any actual conclusions to any of those storylines, and a lot of that was because of all the side quests we kept going on. So that definitely leads me to being a little bit worried for this finale and how it will truly wrap things up, but also tease certain things for season 3. I would say the biggest thing that I'm hoping for is that we get a little bit more from Apocalypse and continue the Apocalypse storyline, because it feels like he has been truly sidelined for a lot of this season. Now, another negative that I do have actually involves Wolverine once again, and it's a very, very small detail, and if it didn't bother anyone else, that is great. However, for me, it is something that absolutely irritates the hell out of me, and that is when they see that the X-Men are inevitably in trouble, they're watching something on the news, Wolverine decides to say something, and instead of commenting on how his friends are in danger, or how the X-Men are in danger, or how they need to go over there and rescue people, he decides to say Jean and the others. And in my opinion, that is just so annoying. I am so sick of Wolverine being so fixated on Jean Grey. Now, is this a big issue in itself? No, it isn't. It is a very minute detail, and again, I understand if a lot of people don't have an issue with it, but I am so sick of any time they do anything involving Wolverine and Jean Grey. I am over it. I don't want it anymore in any story. It is the most uninteresting part of X-Men as a whole, in my opinion, and it is the one thing that makes me absolutely despise this version of Wolverine. I am just absolutely sick of it. Make him his own character and stop making a big part of his character, if not his entire character, being fawning over Jean Grey. And even something so small as to say Jean and the others are in danger, or we have to go get to Jean and the others to rescue them. I am so sick of it. Just mention anybody else, anyone other than Jean Grey. I'm so absolutely over it. It is definitely my least favorite characteristic of Wolverine as a whole, and it is definitely the reason that this version of Wolverine is by far and away my least favorite version that we've ever gotten in any medium. But I'm interested to hear from all of you. What did you think of the episode overall? How do you think the finale is going to go? Do you think things will get wrapped up very nicely, or do you think we're going to have too many things to juggle and it could lead to the season feeling pretty lackluster overall? And are you as sick of Wolverine and Jean Grey as I am? Let me know in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And I'll see all of you in the next video. Goodbye.